Okay, in this video tutorial, I'm going to show you how to do the CRUD using the platform we created. So with the CRUD is create, retrieve, update, and delete. So for that reason, we have to create our own model, which is capable of taking all those different action and do the proper thing. So I'll go to the model, I'll create a HTML file or model. I'll call it cars.phtml. Of course, since I have to deal with multiple action here, because I consider this cars.php as to be a controller, which can have many multiple methods, like it can add, it can delete, it can update, and it can do all sort of things that we need to do in this case, right? So what I'm going to do is, for that reason, I need a few information here because I'm taking different action on this one file. I have to be able to change the view as well. So I have to, in order to organize myself to create these views, what I would do is I will go ahead and use a switch statement. I'm going to use my built-in function, which is in functions inside the lib directory, and I will get the parameter action. So the action tells me what is that we want to do with the cars, right? So we have different cases. So I'll start with the very first case, which is view. So I will, if action is view, I will simply view all the cars in that view, and definitely I'll put a break so it doesn't jump to the other one. I'm going to copy and paste this and simply change the case to delete. So in this case I'm going to delete. Let's do another one. For sure, if I can do view and delete, now I should be able to update, and then lastly I should be able to add a new car as well. So that's why I will just add to use the case add. Now, since I have different views for each of these actions, I have to be able to update the view as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new directory called data, which holds the text file containing the car information. I already have some car here, so just copy paste this instead of just typing one by one. So this is a list of the car that I have. So as you can see, each record contains some information. Let me put these numbers on sequence. It doesn't really matter as long as these numbers are unique. It allows me to identify the record in this file. So I have the ID of the car that I do use as identification. I have the make, model, year, and the price. So simply any of these records I want to change, I gotta know the ID at the very beginning of these line, and simply I can start working with that one record. So obviously, now that I have all this information ready, and as you can see, I use comma as a delimiter in this record. So I'll go back to the model, and I will start with the view first. So I want to view all the cars so you can see them all in the view template. So we use table to actually render all this information. But in order to organize myself, I'll go ahead and create a directory. I'll call it cars. So this is where I store all these views, different views in that one. So the very first one I'll create is going to be view.phtml. Let me just go ahead, yeah. View, okay, I'll go with the add.phtml. Then I'll go and create the next one. I'll call this one delete.phtml. Two more to go. Some of this view I might not even want to use it later. Next one is update.phtml, and of course the last one will be the view.phtml. So just to make sure everything works in here, so what happened is, as soon as I get to this page, I will read the action, and based on the action I want to load the view. So if you remember, view is loaded after the model, so I can simply create a variable that holds the current view. So what I do is I will get the current view directory where it is. I have to use this one in the config file. So I already have one view path, and then I will add the directory. In this case is going to be cars, and then I end up adding the I'm going to end up adding the directory separator as well. Beside that, I also when I have this path which points to the view file, I also need to know the file. So for that reason, I have to go back to the config file and add the path to where the data are stored. So I'll go ahead into the config. I simply copy the very last element of this array, paste it in, and I just change the lib to data, data underscore path, and of course I change the lib to path, the data as well. So that way I can simply use these field in the config array across my website. So here you go, config data path, and then simply I will put the file name here as well. So the file name is, let me go ahead, yeah, cars.txt. So it's a string. So this way I have the file name. I can use this variable to access the file anytime I need to, right? Okay, let me just do one more thing. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to each case and I start specifying the view file for each of these action are taken by the user, right? So I will go ahead and say view variable, because remember view is already defined inside the index.php. So I'm overwriting that variable. So before it gets to the view section to load the view, I'm overwriting the variable so I can simply access. So here is current view. I add the view.phtml. So remember the directory is already inside the view path. I wanted to call it directory maybe. It can be current view directory. We'll just leave it as it is right now. I'm just going to copy the path and simply add to the rest of them. As I said, some of these view I might not use. I just put it for now. So I'll go change this one to delete.phtml. The next one I'll go and change it to update.phtml, and the last one is going to be add.phtml. Okay. So now that I did this, let's go ahead and try this. I wanna make sure this works as well, so I can test my work, right? So since I have the view and I know the data file, I should be able to pass any action through the parameter list, and then that action will take me to this switch statement, and based on the switch statement, each of those view will be loaded, right? So okay, let me see what I can do now. I can simply go ahead and add the information here, right? Okay, so I have the view, update, delete, and add. Okay, let me just go ahead and access it. So I just run the server again on port number 80. I'll go ahead and simply change the page to cars. So this takes me to the cars controller or cars model, I can say. Then I'll go ahead and pass the action as well. Right? Let me go ahead and pass the action. Percent equal action, and action it can be add, and so on. So let me put some content into the template file so we can actually see the changes. So I'll go here, h1 add car. I'm going to copy this as well and paste it into the other one by changing the action. So here is delete car, update. Yeah, this should be update car. And the last one is view car, right? So let's go and refresh. Okay, I can see the add. I go change this one to delete. I see delete car and view and so on, right? So as long as you can change the action, you can simply get the result you want, or you can land on the template that you have created associated to that view. So let's go ahead and continue with the coding. So here, since as I said, the view is right after the model, I'm overwriting the view before getting to that part. So by the time it comes to this line, line 18, it already has the view I loaded into each of these cases. Okay, if I don't do anything, then simply it's going to stay the default one. Now that I'm in the view, so basically I have the view, I have to get all the information from the file. So I'll create a variable, I'll call it cars. I use the file function, which actually reads the file, or the path that I'm giving, read that file, and return an array. Each element of the array will contain one line, or one record, in our case, one car, right? So simply, since this is returning an array, I can manage the file easily. I can go through each of them by looping through the array. So I'll put the file name in there, which I created on line 4. And let me go ahead and just, I want to test to see if everything is properly working before I continue. So I'll go ahead and print the cars. This should show me all the cars in the file. So let me just go ahead, go to the view. Here you go. These are all the files in a text file that I showed you before, right? So all the records are there, but remember, these are all a string. Save each of those line into an array element. So let's go to the view. Now what I want to do is, in the view, when I get this variable, remember the view is loaded after the model, so simply view will have access to the cars variable too. So since cars is an array, I can simply go to the view and start printing the cars, right? Let's go do that. So I want to create a table, and in each row I want to print a car, right? So what I do is I'll go ahead with the table tag. Of course, any table start with the tr tag. So for that reason, what I would do is I'll go ahead and start with my PHP. I want to loop through the cars variable. Remember, the one that I created in the model. So I'll go for each cars that are coming in. I will select the car. Now I have to start with the tr tag because that's how the records are created in a table, right? So I open and close the tr inside the very first loop. Of course, now if I want to print all the fields, I have to have another loop, right? So the second loop can go through every single field. And if I come over here, look at this, these are comma separated value, right? So before I go on, what I can do is I can split this information into an array, which allows me to loop through each of these value and print them as a column. So that is why I go ahead and create another variable. I'll call it call fields, and I will use a function called explode, which allows me to pass a string and specify the delimiter. Based on that delimiter is passed, it simply gets the string and returns an array. So it will break them into where it can find the delimiter. So now the car fields are what I need to work with. I can simply go ahead and create a loop now that goes through the car fields and generate the column of this row. So again, I'm going to use the for each loop. This time I'm going to get the car fields, and for each of them I just use the car field as an individual value. Now is the time to actually go ahead and print the TD tag. So I'll go ahead and do echo TD, and simply I'll print the field, and this will print all the fields that are stored in that one line, and we actually created the array out of that, right? So it's almost done. I'm good here. Let's go ahead and refresh the page. So as you can see, now I have the table. Of course, I can make this table look better. If I want to do such thing, I can simply go to the Bootstrap template and figure out what are the classes that is used to make the table prettier, right? Which I'm going to do it in a second to show how this is done. So let me go ahead and go to Bootstrap, Twitter Bootstrap. I simply go ahead and let me click on this. I'll go to the documentation, type table here, so it gives me all the information or all the classes or different type of examples. These are different type of table you can actually use. It's just a class you have to add in the table name. Let me see this. Here you go. There's so many of them, right? Even they have hover rows. So I'm going to pick this one. So for that, I simply need to add the class table and table hover if I need to. It also comes with different heading, as you can see, you can apply, and also it comes with responsive table, which makes your table to be responsive on different devices as well. Very nice option to have to add it to your site as well, right? So let's go back here. I'll go to the table tag and simply paste the class attribute with the table and table dash hover. So if I go ahead and refresh this, you go, I have a very nice table here, and you can see it actually does the hover as well, right? Now with that, when I view this, I can actually add a few options here as well to make things better, right? I can have the update the record and also being able to delete a record. So I'm going to implement those two options into the same table as well. For that, what I have to do is I have to add two more columns. So I simply, outside this second loop, I'll go ahead and start appending two more columns using TD tag, right? So I'll go with the TD, I generate a link. This link will point to the page cars. And of course, if you remember, we have the action to identify what is that we want to do. So simply go here and say page is equal cars, which is the bubble, right? And then I'll go ahead and ampersand action, and for the very first one I want to go ahead and do delete. Now in order to be able to identify the record that I want to delete, of course I have to have some unique identification. And what is that unique identification? Is the ID I added at the beginning of the file, right? Since those are unique, I can simply go ahead and use that one. So for that reason, whenever I want to delete or update a car, I have to pass the ID as well. So I'll go ahead and add the ID here. Remember, since we already explode the car, I can simply go to the very first field and get its value, right? So let's go ahead and create the link. So as I said, the very first value is the ID of each record. So the very first field on each record. So let's go create the update as well. So for the update, again, I need the ID. I just go ahead and change the action to update as well. I think I'm done here. Let me go ahead and save this file and view it on the browser. Okay, I've got the links. So if I click on these links, any of them, it should pass the ID, which it doesn't pass the ID right now. Let me check my code. The model is cars, and okay, I've got the equal sign here. So page is equal cars, which is the model name. And also, let me just refresh one more time. If I click here, still ID is now passed. Let me check the code one more time, please. I can see I have the fields. Oh, I gotta use the car field, because the car field is the one that is the array. The field is just the value, right? So that should be okay too. Okay, let me just check this out. Still ID is now passed. Strange. I go back here. Let me go ahead and word dump the car field. Yeah, let's see what are they in the array. See if I get all the values. I'm just wondering, maybe I don't have a proper value in there. Okay, if I refresh, of course I have to go to the view. Okay, I see all the values there. ID is there too. So let me check my link one more time. I have page equal cars. Okay, I don't see the ID yet. Let me check the source code. Oh, here it is. See that? I have a double quote, extra double quote right after the equal sign. So it start with, and okay, I gotta remove that extra double quote right after the equal sign. Okay, this should work now. Let's go ahead and refresh the page and try. So now if I pass this, I can simply see the ID is appearing on the URL. So this means in each of those actions, I can simply get the ID and take the action that is requested, either update or delete, right? Okay, let's move on to the model, the car, and go to the delete section. We start with the delete because it's easier. So what I'm going to do here is I have to get the ID that is passed and also load the list of the cars from the file. So I can simply go ahead and start writing this information by getting the ID using my own method, the get method that we created in functions.php inside the leap folder. So I store the ID in ID variable, then I use the variable cars to load all the records in the file using the file function, of course. Now what I have to do is, we know that the cars is an array. I simply have to go through every single record and start checking the very field of every record to see if it matches the ID that I receive. If it does, then that is the car that has to be removed, or that is the line or the record or the array element that has to be removed. So what I do is, for that reason, since cars is an array, I simply have to go loop through this array. I'm going to use for each loop to loop through this array. And I also break the array element into index and the string or the value, key value. So I'll show you where I use the index later. So whatever is in the car, I just simply have to use the explode function. Since our delimiter is comma, I use comma to explode. So what it does is go through the string, wherever it finds a comma, it will break them into pieces and then simply creates an array that is stored in the fields. Now I can go loop through the fields, and for every single field that I have in this array fields, I can check it against the ID and to see if the value matches or not. Of course, I can write a different way. I just want to show you these first. So I'll go and unset the cars with the index that is selected in this loop, right? So in this case, what I'm doing is I'm saying if this field that I'm looking at is matching the ID, simply remove the element from the array using the unset method. And of course, if I do that, I got the record that I wanted to delete. I just have to break the loop, right? So let me close this, and then what is the error here? Let me just check this. Okay, I have an extra. Let me see, an extra. Okay, I put the code outside the if statement. I'm just going to remove this, move the code one line up, and then of course I'm going to close the if statement because it contains more than one line, right? So this is one way, but I don't really need to do this, because when I do break the content using explode and save them in the fields, it is already an array, and I can simply go say in fields square bracket 0, which is the very first field, is equal ID, right? So that works better. Now this is more optimized version of the code. So I can simply unset the value, and I can break the one loop that I have. Now that the loop is break, what I have to do is simply I have to write back the array into the same file. So let me just go ahead and print this value inside the car, see if unset works properly or not, right? So I'm going to print the car. Let me go back to the browser, and I just click on the very first car. Remember, there are 6 cars here. So if I click on delete, simply you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the first one is gone, right? Let's try one more time. Let's go to number 6. You see, it's gone. So our unset function removes the element from the array. Now that we know the information in the array are those that we want to write into the file, simply what I have to do is I got to use a function that allows me to write the information back into the file. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use file put contents function, which can have the file name, and then simply I have to pass the array, but I have to convert the array into a string. So in order to do that, I will use the opposite of explode, which is implode, that gets an array and making a string. Now I can specify the delimiter. I don't need because I just want to put them together. And remember, when we read this information from the file, every line in that file ended with a new line, right? So the new line is part of the record. I don't need to do anything. I just use implode with an empty string, and I simply pass the cars array. So that way what happens is it's going to put all the array element into a string, bam, write it back into the file. So let me copy this in case if you're going to delete this, so I can have the same record to work with. So I'm going to go ahead and click on RX 350, okay, and I go back to the dashboard. It should not be there anymore. Let me just go ahead, refresh. You go, you see that? So the record is gone. And let me see if I can show you the file as well. So as you can see here, we have only these records. So I'll paste back the information again so I can work with this and show you how this works. So now what happened is, since my delete is working, if something is deleted, I should do something. I got to take an action. So what I do is I'll take the user or redirect the request to the action view where the information of the car is shown in the table. In order to do that, I'm going to use the header function in PHP with the string, mandatory string location, colon, which is specifying what I want to send the user. Simply I put the URL there, which is / page is equal cars, of course, ampersand action is equal view, right? So that way, as soon as the delete is completed, I will simply redirect the user to the view section of the cars so they can see the result of these operations, so you can see the remaining car in their inventory or in that table, right? So if I go there and simply look at the file, all of them are there, and I start keep deleting now. So I delete the information. As you can see, all of them gets deleted. It comes back, redirect, so I can see the information has been deleted, right? Of course, there's so many other ways of doing this and passing different messages, confirmation messages. I'll leave those for your creativity and how it works with your problem that you have in your hand. But look at this, I'll just paste the information back to the file so we can do some other things with this information as well, right? So the delete was very easy. Of course, we have so many other, some other action that we have to take. So I'm going to go through the next one, which allows me to actually work with the cars, right? So let's go ahead and start with the, let me see, maybe update. If I go with the update, yeah, I can do the update. So in order to do the update, first I have to retrieve the car that the ID was passed, show it to the user, put the value into a form, and then let them modify it and then submit the information, right? So for that reason, first I load the cars, then I get the ID that is passed through the action update, right? Now that I have this, I simply have to go do the exact same thing I did with the delete. I have to loop through the array element, figure out the ID is matching any of those ID of those records, and if it does, simply that is the one. I have to put the information into a form and allow the user to actually go and update them. So I create a variable, I call it car to update, and this variable is going to be used by view to render the information of the car into an HTML form. So I'm going to copy the for each loop from there because it's going to be the exact same with minor changes. So now what I do is as soon as the ID and field is matched, instead of on setting, I simply have to set the car to update equal the car or the fields that I have, because as an array, right? So I'll go ahead and I make this one equal fields, and that should be it, right? Yes. So car to update has all the values I need. Now is the time to go back to the view and print a value. But let me just do one test here. Let me see if I can go here and just print the value of the car to update, so we can see we are actually getting the right information, right car, by passing the ID. Let me refresh the page so we get all the record back. I'll click on update. Here you go. You see the very first car I got, and I can go to RX350. So I'm getting the right file. I'm sorry, the right record, right? So now that I have the right record, simply in this page right here, I have to draw a form, put those information into an array into the HTML form, let the user change this, and simply click submit to update the information. So for that reason, I need one more action, right? But let me go ahead and create the form first. So simply I'm going to get the form in, the form that can have all the values that I need, right? Let me go ahead and do this. Okay. Okay, this is the variable car to update is the one that I have access inside the view. So I'm going to use that one definitely, as I said, to draw the information with the form. So I'm going to create the form, but I have to make sure the car to update is an array. If it's an array, I can show this value. Otherwise, there is nothing to be updated. There was something wrong, right? So that's why I'm going to use if is array car to update, and if it is, then I will render the render the form. Of course, I can do the else as well. So in the else part, I simply will go and check if I want to show another message, like saying car cannot be found or wrong car has been passed, and anything else you want to, right? So here I'm going to pass the else part, right? So this is in case if the car to update is not an array. I simply can put a message here saying cannot find the car, cannot view the car, cannot, whatever message you think is proper to show to the user if car to update is not an array, which indicates the car could not be found from the text file. So let's go ahead and create the form. So for this one, I'm going to put the action, the same URL that I need to, page is equal cars, right? And definitely the action has to be defined. I have to create a new action. I have the information. So this time I will call do update, meaning I already at the update stage. So now when the user clicks this, it has to go to update, do update action, grab all the information from the form, and start processing the information by updating the record and writing back to the file, right? So that's why I do the to update here. It can be done with the other things too, especially when you do add. Add is very similar to update, and then you can have do add right at the end. The method I'm going to call it post, although I already passed the information using the get method, so I can use both of them at the same time, right? So I'll go ahead, create a text box, type text, call it make, and simply here is where I have to print the value of the array car to update. So I will present the user with the current value, then simply they can update and submit the form. So that is why inside the value I simply go ahead and open the PHP and I use the echo to print the value of car to update. And here make, if you remember, is the second field of the array. So I simply go ahead and put square bracket 1, right? I close this, and I gotta do almost the same for the rest of the things as well. So if I come over here, you see here go Honda is inside the text box. So if I go to any other number, simply you can see different values there. Now if I put a car ID that doesn't exist, I can get the message cannot find the car, right? Because I couldn't create the array since there was no such record with that ID in the text file. So let's go through the next step. Now what I have to do is I simply have to go create the other fields as well, right? So I'm just going to go ahead and post the same thing here. I just do a small modification here. I have make, model, I have the price, and then now in order to let to do update, know which car to update, I still have to pass the ID. So that is why I have to add an extra HTML field here that carries the ID of this car. I'm going to use a hidden field to pass the ID. So I'll go ahead and say type hidden. I'll call it the ID, and then simply for the value, I'll put the value of the ID in this array, which is the very first field, right? So let me copy this, put it down here, and simply access the very first element. So that way, with this information that needs to be updated, I'm passing the ID of the car too. So again, the only thing that can connect all these things together is the ID of the record. That's how I identify which record you want to manage, right? So let's go ahead and refresh this page. I have all the information here. So what I do here is now, if I go ahead and change any of these field value and I submit the information, then simply has to do that. I just submit it. There is no do update. That's why I get the 404, right? There is no do update functionality. So if I come over here and look at this, this is the action, and I have the ID right there as a hidden value. So whenever you submit this information, you're actually passing that ID too. So now is the time to create the method or to action that can take care of the update, right? Let me just remove this printer from here and simply go ahead and create another case for the action. I call it do update. So with the do update, simply I have to go ahead and start doing what I have to do. In most cases is I have to go ahead and get the cars, get the ID, get all the information, and simply collect those information and write them back to the file. So what I'm going to do is first I'm going to get the ID, and for do update I don't need a view because I can simply do redirect the way I did with the delete, right? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create this record from the information I'm receiving. So I'm creating variable, I call it updated car. I'll put the ID in. Remember in the file we had to have comma as a delimiter. So I'll put the delimiter between every single parameter I'm receiving from the update form, right? So I add the make, I add the model, and remember I just have to separate them with the comma because I want to write this back into the file as well. So then I go get the year, and then I'll finally go ahead and get the price. Now, since I want to write this to the file, the delimiter is comma between the field, but the new line is a delimiter between the records in the file, right? Now, different OS define the new line differently. Some of them use backslash and some backslash n. Some of them use backslash r, backslash n. In order to write something that is work for all those operating system, I'm going to use the PHP end of file constant, which based on the operating system, very similar to directory separator, will work automatically based on what is appropriate for the operating system this code is running in, right? So doing that, now I have a record that contains all the information. I'm going to load the cars again, the same way I did in the update and delete. Of course, now what I have to do is I need the same for each loop, right? So I can go ahead and get this file and paste it here. Remember, this can be a function in your library that actually does this for you because you do this many times, right? So simply I'll go ahead and I check if the ID is equal to this. Now car to update will carry the information I have just created, updated car. So what I'm going to do is on that car, whichever index is this car right now I'm looping through, right? I just simply make it equal to the value that I have. And that value is just give me a second. Yeah, that value is, my screen went blank for a second, sorry about that. I'll put the updated car into the car index, into that array. Now array contains the new information. I overwrite the content of that array. So here I go ahead, I use the file put content again, the same way I did before, and I just simply redirect them as I did at the delete. So if you look at it, they're very similar as well, right? So I have those information, write it to the array element that has the ID. So I'm going to go ahead and start changing this information. So here I'll go ahead and put this one as uppercase so we can see it, right? I submit the information. If I come back here, see record number 4, you can simply see is uppercase. I'm going to change the price for the very first car to $21.45. Okay, so you can see that change is happening too, right? So we did the delete, we did the update, and add is very similar. You just have to provide the user with a form to insert the information. You just have to figure out a way to have a unique ID for each record, which can be another file that contains, opens a text file. Every time you call this function, opens the text file, reads the content, add 1 to the value, and write it back. So you can have start the number by 1 in that text file and say get number or get ID, and every time change that file or call that file, upgrade the ID, and use it for your own record. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll try to add or enhance this in future as well. Thank you for watching.